What if light became a nobody? Chapter 2. Baby's First Missions. G'day everyone, Rune here, and this is Chapter 2 of my What if Light Became a Nobody story. If you're new to this story, click the link in the description below to be taken to the playlist. Now let's begin the next chapter. It's been a week since Tilks came to be the newest member of this strange group known as Organization 13. And in that week, he has not left the castle once. Not that he's ever tried, mind. The place is a maze, and he quickly came to the conclusion that trying to find a way out on his own would be more trouble than it was worth. Instead, his time at the castle has been taken up with training in order to help him get a handle on his weapon, and maybe figure out how to summon. It wasn't until yesterday that it came to light that this training was only wasting everyone's time. It was during one of the training exercises, which involved him fighting a horde of these unsettling white creatures that the blonde man, Vexen, called Dusks. One of the felled Dusks had left behind an odd white crystal. Curious, he'd picked it up, then felt a pulse from his summoning window. Acting on pure instinct, he pressed the crystal to the window and watched as it was absorbed. Once it had vanished, the image of a Dusk had appeared on the inner band. It seems that in order to summon anything with his summoning window, he needs it to absorb these strange crystals or items like them. So, by keeping him within the confines of the castle, the organization is preventing him from gaining the very power they want him for. Hence, why he will be going on his very first mission today. Entering what he has come to call the living room, he quickly spots the man with long blue hair and a scar in the shape of an X on his face. His name is Sykes, and Tilks doesn't really like him. He was one of the ones that looked at Tilks like he wanted to dissect him when he first arrived. As much as he would prefer to stay away from the man, he's apparently the one that everyone has to talk to get their missions. So, taking a deep breath, he approaches the man. As he approaches, Sykes watches him carefully, making Tilks feel oddly exposed. When he is standing right in front of him, Sykes informs him that his first mission is going to be a search and destroy mission. He also tells the team that due to his weapon being underdeveloped and his lack of experience, he will be acting as a support for another member going on this mission. Something at the back of Tilks' head tells him that he should be angry at the comment. Turning away from Tilks, Sykes calls out the name Roxas. Turning in the direction that Sykes is looking, Tilks sees the blonde boy from that day walk over to them. Despite having been living in the same castle for a week, Tilks has not had a chance to be introduced to the boy and girl that had caught his attention, with the two always being away on missions or Tilks being holed up in the training room. His attention is brought back to Sykes as he tells the two their target and holds out a hand, manifesting a black portal that Tilks has seen other members using. Silently, he follows Roxas through the portal. The place they appear in is full of sand and sandstone buildings. There are wooden stalls covered in cloth, which he guesses must be for merchants to sell their wares. The sun is beating down on them mercilessly, which is made all the worse by the black coats they're currently wearing. Tilks looks around, the place feeling vaguely familiar. Before he can dwell on it though, Roxas is tapping his shoulder to get his attention. Turning to him, the older teen explains to Tilks that the Heartless they're looking for should be somewhere in the east section of the town. Tilks tilts his head in confusion. He heard the term Heartless getting tossed around at the castle, but had never gotten an answer as to what it meant. Seeing his confusion, Roxas asks if Tilks hasn't seen a Heartless yet. Tilks shakes his head. Giving a small smile, Roxas tells Tilks to follow him and leads him to another area of the town. Stopping on top of a building, Roxas directs Tilks to gaze down at the ground below them, where strange black creatures are meandering around. Some appear to be wearing armor, while others are just black shapes. Roxas explains to him that these are Heartless, creatures that are created from hearts that have lost their bodies. The strongest of these are often made up of several hearts. Their target is one such Heartless. Tilks turns to him, asking how they're going to find their target. Roxas explains that usually these Heartless are leaders of the smaller Heartless, so defeating the smaller Heartless usually draws them out. He tells Tilks to follow him and jumps off the building, Tilks not far behind. During the ensuing battle, Tilks fells a small Heartless in a funny red robe and hat, causing it to drop a small red crystal. Picking it up, he places it against his summoning window and watches as it's absorbed into the stained glass. Moments later, an image of the Heartless that he defeated appears on the window next to the image of the Dusk. He absently wonders if there's a limit to the number of summons before turning to Roxas. As he does so, he sees a dark form larger than any of the Heartless they'd defeated rising up behind the blonde, just as he's straightening up. Before he can think, Tilks is running towards him, his summoning window flying out ahead of him. "Roxas, look out!" His summoning window flies between Roxas and the attacker, just in time to block a curved blade from striking the blonde. Acting fast, Roxas resummons his Keyblade and begins to attack the Heartless, which Tilks can now see is a 6-armed humanoid wearing armor and a head that looks oddly like a snake. While Roxas attacks the Heartless, which is about twice his size, Tilks keeps his distance and provides support via his new summon, which pelts the monster with fireballs. By the time the battle is over, the two boys are breathing heavily. Tilks watches as a large heart shoots towards the sky as the Heartless's body disintegrates, wondering exactly where the heart is going. His attention is then caught by Roxas, who's smiling at him and thanking him for watching his back. Tilks simply shrugs, not entirely sure how to react to the gratitude. It's not like it was even a conscious decision on his part, his body just moved on its own. Roxas doesn't seem to be bothered by Tilks' reaction and simply continues to smile. "Come on, you've earned the icing on the cake." Tilks frowns in complete confusion, being the most emotive that he's ever been in his life. Or what he remembers of it anyway. Roxas chuckles at his reaction and gestures for Tilks to follow him as they head back towards the portal. Sometime later, Tilks sits on top of a clock tower in a small, quiet town, watching the sunset. Roxas sits next to him, handing him some blue ice cream on a stick. Taking it, he asks what it is, and Roxas answers with sea salt ice cream. At the look of shocked disgust on Tilks' face, Roxas bursts out laughing, telling him to at least try it. Hesitantly, he takes a small bite, finding himself pleasantly surprised. It's not bad. Roxas grins, looking quite pleased with himself before he looks past Tilks and calls out the name Shion. Tilks turns to see the black-haired girl that had been sitting with Roxas in the meeting room. She walks up to them, taking up the gap that had been between Roxas and Tilks, taking care not to drop the stick of sea salt ice cream in her own hand. Once she's situated herself, she turns to Tilks with a soft smile. "It's nice to finally meet you in person, Tilks." Tilks simply nods before turning back to his ice cream, not really sure what to say. He turns back to the sunset, feeling a strange warm sensation wash over him. He asks how the two found this place, and Roxas explains that it was his friend Axel that showed it to him, and he brought Shion here after she was first able to summon her Keyblade. Not recognizing the name, Tilks asks who Axel is. Roxas explains that he's not at the castle at the moment, having been sent on a mission to a place called Castle Oblivion, but he promises to introduce the two as soon as he gets back. With that, the three fall into companionable silence as they eat their ice cream and watch the sunset. The next day, Tilks walks into the living/mission room, planning on getting his next mission. Looking around, he sees that the room is empty, aside from an older teenager strumming a blue musical instrument. He guesses that Sykes is still talking with Xemnas about the missions being assigned to everyone. Curious, he wanders over to the room's only other occupant, wanting to get a closer look at what he's playing. Once he's close enough to get a proper look at it, he can see that it's very similar to a guitar, but with a smaller body and a longer neck. He asks if it's a sitar, causing the older teen to jump nearly a foot into the air in shock. Rounding on Tilks, he tells him to make some noise as he walks next time. Tilting his head slightly at the over-the-top reaction, Tilks gives a polite, if monotone apology as the elder settles back into his seat. After a minute, he speaks up with a, "Well, is it?" causing the other to turn to him with a questioning look. Realizing that he mustn't have really heard him, Tilks repeats his question. The teen's eyes widen in surprise and he confirms that yes, it is a sitar. He then tells Tilks that he's surprised that he knows what a sitar is, as he'd had to explain it to everyone else. It's at this moment that Sykes enters the room and calls Tilks over, making the boy tense. As he's turning to walk over to the intimidating man, the teen stops him. Turning back, the older teen gives him a smile and a thumbs up, introducing himself as Demix. Tilks nods back with a simple, "nice to meet you," before continuing to make his way over to Sykes. Walking up to the man, he sees that he's not alone. Standing next to him is Zigbar. Sensing his approach, Zigbar turns to him with a grin. "Hey, short stack, looks like you're working with me today." Tilks turns to Zigbar, eyebrow raised in question. "Short stack?" Zigbar grins, pointing out that Tilks is the youngest here now and also the shortest, so he's a short stack. Tilks just shrugs, not sure how he should react to that, before turning to Sykes and asking what the mission is. The man glowers down at Tilks, which he's beginning to think is his default expression, before explaining. This is going to be a reconnaissance mission to a world that has only just come onto the organization's radar. The world in question, up until recently, had been completely isolated from the rest of the multiverse, so they don't know anything about it at the moment. Hence why Tilks and Zigbar are both going on this mission. Tilks needs to be educated in how to properly complete a reconnaissance mission, and Zigbar is one of the organization's best when it comes to that. So any mistakes that Tilks makes in his own observations can easily be caught and fixed by Zigbar. Tilks is beginning to get the impression that Sykes really doesn't like him. Zigbar tells Sykes to relax and give Tilks a break. He is just a kid after all, and only like 1 week old. "You remember what you were like at that age, right?" With that, he turns to Tilks with a grin, telling him not to worry. With his tutelage, Tilks will be an ace at recon in no time. After all, there's no way he can be as bad as Roxas was during his first time. With that, they walk through the portal to the unknown world. When they exit the portal, they are standing in the middle of what looks like the street of a large city. There's a massive walled-off building to the right, and down the street there are what looks like shops and cafes all over, and there is the distinct sound of honking horns. It's the middle of the night and the stars can't be seen because of all the light pollution, and there isn't a single person out and about. However, looking to the end of the street, Tilks can see lights zooming past, indicating that the city is definitely populated, unlike Never was. There's also something about the place that tugs at the back of his mind, like there's something there that he can't quite grasp. Before he can dwell on it too much, however, Zigbar begins to explain the basics of recon. How he needs to examine the area and make note of any little detail that could give them an idea of what the place is, if it often has people moving through it, and if so, why. Things like that. Nodding in understanding, the first thing Tilks does is walk down the street to the massive building, curious as to what it is. When he gets close, he notices that the front is locked with a large iron gate. There is also a metal sign along one of the cement pillars that the gate is fixed to. Daikoku Private Academy, it reads. There is that odd feeling again. He tilts his head quizzically before turning to Zigbar. He remarks that the large building is a school, specifically a private school, meaning that the parents pay for the school's expenses. He walks back down the street until he comes to a little cafe. Looking through the window, he can spot a booth in a small, awkward nook around the back, slightly separated from the other tables and booths. He then looks back in the direction of the school, noting that it would probably get quite a few student customers on their way home from school. He then turns to look at the trees lining the path. He hadn't taken any notice of them before, but now that he's really looking, he can see that the leaves are all various shades of orange, gold, and brown, indicating that it's autumn. However, looking at the ground, he can't see any notable piles of fallen leaves. So either the city is really on top of cleaning up the leaves, or it isn't far enough into the season for the leaves to be falling in massive amounts. If he had to guess, he'd say it's somewhere around late October to early November. He tells this to Zigbar. With all of his observations down, they move to the side where they are slightly hidden by the buildings. There, Zigbar tells him that this is the trickiest part of recon. Now, Tilks needs to put all of his findings together to form a cohesive picture of what this place is. Tilks tilts his head as he thinks it's pretty obvious. This is the street of a private high school, meaning that all of the students that go there are from well-off families or got in on scholarships. As such, many cafes and shops have opened in the area in order to cater to the students and faculty of the school. With it being October, school should still be running during this month. That makes him pause, as he thinks aloud that might mean they'll need to find somewhere else to open the portal next time if they come back to this world, especially if they plan on coming here during the day. If this world has truly been as isolated from the rest of the worlds until now as Sykes said, then seeing a big black portal just appear out of nowhere will probably freak people out. Zigbar grins at Tilks, saying that he can't imagine why Sykes was so worried about Tilks being able to learn this stuff. He's a natural. Patting the kid on the back, he then leads him back to the portal, neither aware of the figure watching them while snickering in amusement. And that, everyone, is where I'm going to leave the story for now. Join me next time as a new player enters the field and Tilks questions everything to do with how this multiverse works. I'm Rune. See you next chapter.